All right, so this is the part of the show where we give you an idea of stories that should be on your front pages but aren't necessarily. South African families in KZN are spending more money on food, with low-income homes forking out about 30% more on groceries. Now, this has also led to some households borrowing money to keep themselves fed, raising questions around the adequacy of government's intervention to help South Africans during the COVID-19 pandemic. For more on this now, we're joined on the line by the Pietermaritzburg Program Coordinator of the Economic Justice and Dignity Group. That's Mervyn Abrahams. Mr. Abrahams, thanks very much for your time. Welcome to the AM report. You know, one can almost feel intuitively that food in particular has gotten a whole lot more expensive during the lockdown, raising questions around how families who've already had their belts tightened and how they've been able to sort of bridge the gap, so to speak. What is the plight of some of these low-income homes during the lockdown?
So good morning, and good morning to all your listeners. What we have seen since the beginning of March is a spike in the price of food. We have seen, for instance, our food basket increase by 7.8% or 250 rand from 3,221 rand to 3,470 rand. And the spike of food prices has been across the board. So we've seen increases in the price of oil, we've seen increases in the price of bread, we've seen increases in the price of a number of major core foods that households have to buy, in particular, for instance, the price of rice. But also as a result of the lockdown regulations, we are having more children at home and, of course, more adults at home as the economy is slowly opening up and people are working 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. And what that in effect means is that households have to procure additional amount of food. So the food runs out quicker. And what women are telling us is that they are buying, for instance, an extra 15 kgs of maize meal, of rice, an extra 5 liters of cooking oil, extra potatoes, extra cabbage. And that cost of all those extra foods is about 509 rand. And so, in a sense, we have to look at about 800 rand more that households are spending per month on food, and that is where we get the price of about 30% more additional spending on food than a year ago. And so the situation is very bad, and we shouldn't be surprised to see the long queues in the townships where people are queuing to get a food parcel.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, we speak about households as if they're a homogenous group in the country. We know that, you know, the home as a structure looks very different according to the communities that we deal with. You've already mentioned, for instance, women being some of the people you've spoken to. Are the figures different depending on the makeup of the household? You know, I'm thinking about, for instance, single-headed households versus, you know, a situation where there are parents and kids in the home.
So our basket and our data track households in low income and working class areas, and our basket tracks, generally speaking, a household of 7 persons, in which there are 3 adults and 4 children, because that's on average, of course, the general makeup of households in low income and working class areas. But I dare to say that our figures do not necessarily reflect the situation of child-headed households, etc. And there I expect that the situation is going to be even more dire than in working-class households. One of the things we've noticed, for instance, and we can deduce very quickly, is that the state did come on board to increase the social grants, for instance. So we've seen a 250 rand increase in the old age grant. But now with the food prices having increased by at least 200, almost 250, it's 249 rand and 98 cents. So in fact, that 250 increase in the old age grant is now entirely spent on food. And there is a reason for that, an unintended consequence. With the lockdown and with social distancing, women are taking much longer to get inside the store, with the transport matter, and they have to get home quite quickly from the taxi, they are no longer in the position to go and look for the specials from one store to another. And so they are actually price takers within the retail store that they are shopping. And so their budget for shopping doesn't stretch as far now as it used to do before the pandemic.
And very quickly, Mervyn, I mean, for the families that simply didn't have an extra 30% of money to spend to begin with, even before the lockdown, how are they funding this increased demand on their incomes? I mean, where are they getting the money from?
So women are telling us that by and large they are going to loan sharks because that's the easiest way to procure money. But of course, it's also the most dangerous way to procure money. And so they go to money lenders in the townships who are prepared to give them the money. But then what often happens is that when they get the next grant, they have to first pay off their loan that they have taken the month before. And what we are going to see as we come out of this lockdown, people trapped into deeper cycles of debt, where with their grant, even as they get the grant, they would have to hand that grant over to the loan money lender and then start borrowing money for the next month again. And so that cycle will just continue, and that is going to put us in even deeper problems going forward.
Absolutely. Almost feels like we're swapping one crisis for another. Thanks very much for your time. Certainly appreciate your insights. Mervyn Abrahams is the Pietermaritzburg Program Coordinator for the Economic Justice and Dignity Group. Certainly appreciate your insights indeed.